Is it not prima facie that somebody has failed? A former president was shot.
Sir, this could have been our Texas school book depository. I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days,
Then
just like you
fire
have.
somebody to
and I will
hold
tell
them
you,
accountable.
Senator,
Just a sample of yesterday's U.S. Senate hearing, delving into the failures that are stacking up around the Secret Service from the July 13th attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning at around this time live, or you can join the live chat. But you can also catch segments throughout with America's Talking Network and the Center Square. So we focus on the U.S. Senate hearing yesterday. It was a joint hearing between the Judiciary Committee and the Homeland Security Committee. A lot because, well, we've got the Democratic National Convention coming up in Chicago next month, and that's less than 20 days here. You've got a lot of high-ranking individuals going to be in Chicago, so a lot of those individuals do have Secret Service protection. And if Secret Service has a lot of work to do to build confidence back up amongst those who are protected by Secret Service, considering what happened July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, then there's a lot of concern as to what happens in Chicago. And Senator Dick Durbin, he started off the committee yesterday, of course, Illinois' senior U.S. senator and Democrat whip in the U.S. Senate. He, of course, laid out some questions about the July 13th events, some of the lapses that there were, but he did also start by noting how important it is to get to some resolution here so that there's more confidence heading into the Democrat National Convention up in Chicago beginning August 19th.
I'd like to begin by making a statement that it's not in the form of a question, and you'll understand why when I say it. In 20 days, we're going to start the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. I have been briefed by the law enforcement agencies of plans for security for that event. Tens of thousands of people will be there, including some of the highest-ranking politicians in the United States. I trust that both of your agencies can answer in the affirmative if I ask you whether you're actively engaged in working with the development of security plan, taking into consideration the lessons of July 13th.
Senator, that is 100% yes from the Secret Service.
Yes, from the FBI as well, sir. We've been working on this for well over a year in preparation.
So that's the Secret Service acting director, Ronald Rowe, who is replacing Kimberly Cheadle, an Illinois native who stepped down last week following a very contentious House hearing where members of the U.S. House didn't get any answers. So clearly, some confidence needs to be boosted there with the questioning from Senator Durbin about protection for the Democratic National Convention. But then Durbin went on to talk about the suspicious activity reports of the shooter the day of, including having a rangefinder.
One last question for either one of you. What is the purpose of a rangefinder? And once this assassin was identified as using a rangefinder, wasn't that proof positive that he was a dangerous individual?
So I'll say, Senator, that obviously somebody is trying to determine where they are in proximity to a location, a fixed location. I'll defer to my colleague here, but I believe it was a recreation or sports related. I thought I had read that it was a golf range finder. Nonetheless, it still would have provided him the ability to provide the distance that he was away from his intended target.
Wasn't that enough?
As far as raising suspicion,
Yes,
I think he was identified as being suspicious by local law enforcement.
and nothing happened.
Well, I know that local law enforcement was attempting to locate him.
Thank you, Mr.
But again, nothing happened, even though he was already identified as somebody with a rangefinder, and you don't show up to presidential rallies with a rangefinder. Chuck Grassley, Republican senator, had some questions about anti-drone technology that the Secret Service uses because, well, the shooter in this case apparently flew a drone over the site that day. hours before Trump took the stage, in a way surveilling the site. Grassley asking about the Secret Service's anti-drone technology.
Okay, also to you, I made public documents that show Secret Service deployed a counter unmanned aerial system operator on July the 13th. According to the Secret Service, the drone system was supposed to be operational at 3 p.m. that day. However, we've been told by Secret Service that because of cellular bandwidth problems, it wasn't operational until about 5:20 of that day. If the system was operational, Secret Service would have had the ability to detect the shooter and his own drone use. Why is the Secret Service dependent upon local cellular network? Does the Secret Service have a backup plan in place?
Yes, thank you, Senator. And that is something that I briefed in the closed door, and again, something that has cost me a lot of sleep because of the eventual outcome of the assailant. That what if we had geolocated him because that counter-UAS platform had been up? It is something that I have struggled with to understand, and I have no explanation for it.
Okay.
It is something that I feel as though we could have perhaps found him. We could have maybe stopped him. Maybe on that particular day, he would have decided this isn't the day to do it because law enforcement just found me flying my drone. People fly drones all the time on the peripheries of our sites. And we go out and we talk to them and we ascertain what their intentions are. Him because that on this day in particular, because of the connectivity challenge, as you noted, there was a delay and he flew his drone at 3:51 approximately. So moving forward, we are leveraging resources from the Department of Homeland Security and others to make sure that we have dedicated connectivity so that we're not reliant on public domain, so that we can ensure that whatever assets we have in place, those assets are operational.
It's wild to think that the shooter flew his drone over the location at 3:51, and the Secret Service was supposed to have their anti-drone jamming technology, whatever it may be. Of course, they don't want to reveal it because, of operational secrets. But they were supposed to deploy that at 3:30, but they didn't because they were having some cell connection issues. And they didn't get it up until about 2 hours after they were supposed to have it up. But 3:30, they were supposed to have it up. They didn't have it up. Shooter flies a drone at 3:51. Pretty remarkable. Then you talk about the radio traffic and how there didn't seem to be any real coordination for the radio traffic. Here's Senator Johnson with that line of questioning.
Does the Secret Service use encrypted communications at events?
On our radio nets, we do, sir.
Are those memorialized? Are those saved?
The radio traffic from Butler, we did not have recordings.
Do you normally?
Not on the road outside of D.C. or outside of a presidential or vice presidential stop.
So communications between Secret Service agents will not be available like we've gotten the communications from local law enforcement.
I'm sorry, Senator.
So we're not going to be able to get those communications. You didn't save them.
No, sir.
Which is very unfortunate.
It is, sir. And moving forward, I've directed that we will now start recording those so that we will have them moving forward.
Again, remarkable, the radio traffic, first off, not a lot of coordination between local and federal, and then the local stuff's recorded, memorialized. But the Secret Service communications are not recorded or memorialized in this instance. Apparently they are in Washington, D.C., and they are on a presidential and a vice presidential, but maybe not for a presidential candidate. More from yesterday, and again, yesterday was about 4-hour-long hearing, but more on the radio traffic. Here is Senator Lee with a line of questioning about when exactly the word gun was heard on radios on that day.
No information regarding a weapon on the roof was ever passed to our personnel.
How is that even possible? Do you want to comment to that?
Senator, again, I believe that information, and this is probably something my colleague can expound on, information that was in law enforcement, local law enforcement channels, but did not cross over and make it to Secret Service awareness.
Senator, just to clarify the timeline, so the individual was first seen by law.
And that's the deputy chief, deputy director of the FBI, Abate, I believe is his name.
Law enforcement on the roof at about 6:08. We're still working to perfect the timeline based on the radio comms and all that. It wasn't until at 6:11:03 seconds, the officer saw him and called out his arm. That was the first sighting where he had the rifle on the roof. And then he...
And that was relayed to the Secret Service Command Center at that
My
point.
understanding is no, Secret Service, it was not relayed to them. It's a narrower time frame, though. It's probably about maybe up to half a minute between the time he's seen with the rifle and when the shots are fired.
But there's still time. At that point, if there were an open channel of communication in which they were able to tell him, he's got a gun, take him out. You could still take President Trump off the stage. You could have him duck. You could have the shooter neutralized. Do you not have a channel of communication by which they can say, gun, take him out?
So again, Senator, that information stayed in local channels and did not make it over to Secret
Did they
Service.
not consider that relevant?
Who
You're
is
saying
they,
that
sir?
you're saying that the local police didn't consider that relevant enough to pass along to the Secret Service?
Sir, I think that they were in the midst of dealing with a very critical situation, and they articulated that over the radio, as I understand it. However, it was never relayed over to us.
Thank you, Senator Lee.
So again, you know, the word gun came out over the radio, I think 30 some odd seconds before shots were actually fired, and that did not get to the Secret Service, the Secret Service acting director says. But there's obviously got to be some monitoring. Listen, I'm not a professional amateur radio guy. I don't have the highest license, but I know enough about amateur radio to know how radios work. And, well, you can monitor all that traffic. You can have systems in place that can pick up every single frequency out there, from frequencies of hand-to-hand radios to frequencies of HF radios to frequencies that even drones use. So if you're not familiar, you're surrounded by radio frequencies, and there's tools out there to pick up on all of that traffic. And I think, you know, from my understanding, you have a central command post that has certain capabilities to monitor all that traffic, but that central command post, when they heard gun, why wasn't that relayed? Anyways, just a fascinating line of questioning here yesterday, and they actually got some substance versus what was, you know, aired during the Cheadle hearing a couple of weeks ago. But here we are still focusing on the here and now of what happened then, what changes are being made. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, he was pretty fired up and saying that really nobody's been held accountable in all of this.
As the person who made the decision to send Donald Trump onto stage knowing that you had a security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir, they haven't.
Has the person who decided not to pull the former president off of stage when you knew that, in your words, the locals were working a serious security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir. Again, I refer you back to my original answer that we are investigating this through a mission assurance. And as opposed to zeroing in on one,
what more do you need to investigate to know
exactly what the decision-making process was? What more do you need to investigate
to know that there were critical enough failures that some individuals ought to be held accountable? I mean, what more do you need to know?
What I need to know is exactly what happened, and I need my investigators to do their job. And I cannot.
A lot of people didn't do their jobs.
I cannot put my thumb on the scale. Otherwise,
what do you mean put your thumb on the scale?
You're asking me, Senator, to completely make a rush to judgment about somebody failing. I acknowledge this was a failure of the Secret Service.
Is it not prima facie that somebody has failed? A former president was shot.
Sir, this could have been our Texas school book depository. I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days, just like you have.
Somebody to
and
hold them accountable.
I will tell you, Senator, that I will not rush to judgment, that people will be held accountable, and I will do so with integrity and not rush to judgment and put people unfairly persecuted.
Unfairly persecuted?
Unfairly,
We've got people
sir,
who are
we
dead.
have to be able to have a proper investigation into this, Senator.
Again, got pretty heated at times, and the questioning of why there's been nobody fired here. Kimberly Cheadle resigned, but why has nobody been fired here? The person who made the decision to allow Trump to go on stage despite there being multiple security threats, the decision to, not man the roof, and a whole host of other the decision to not have the coordination of all the radio channels. Again, what about that drone? Listen, I got a drone right up there, and I got my ham radio stuff over here. I get it. These things are pretty technical and whatnot, but Secret Service has a lot of know-how and savvy. But if they can't get their things operational, apparently Holly said that there was a whistleblower saying that local law enforcement offered up their drone.
I'm also told that local law enforcement suppliers offered the Secret Service drones, and you declined them. Is that true?
So, Senator, one, I've been very transparent and forthcoming.
You don't know how many requests there were.
I've been very transparent and forthcoming.
Your agency has not been transparent and forthcoming, so please, let's not go there.
I have been forthcoming, sir.
That remains to be seen. You've been on the job a few days. So far, you've fired nobody. Now, the drones.
Thank you,
Were
Senator.
you offered drones?
Senator
So
Hawley.
there was an offer to fly a drone on that day.
And why did you deny it?
Again, I think the ability of local law enforcement to provide an asset, we probably should have taken them up on it if it was offered.
And then Roe later went on to say that he's trying to get to the bottom of, if that is the case, why they didn't take that offer. So good bipartisan questions there. I know we heard a lot of the Republicans, but there were good lines of questions from both parties saying there needed to be better radio communications. There's clearly some failures here, and so on. But then you had Democrats like Senator Hirono, and she talked about the need for gun control, but really couldn't get any of the witnesses there testifying to bite on it.
What kind of firearm, what kind of weapon did Crooks use in the assassination attempt?
This was an AR-15 style rifle manufactured by a company named Panther Arms.
And once again, many of the persons involved in these kinds of mass shootings use this particular kind of weapon. We know from similar hearings that the Judiciary Committee has had that we are a nation awash in guns. In your view, shouldn't we be doing more to prevent the easy accessibility of these kinds of firearms in our country?
Senator, we're focused on collecting the facts here, and I'm not going to comment on something like that.
Well, I know that there is a hesitancy to ask about firearms and all of that, and I should think that as a law enforcement person that you probably have some opinions along those lines, but you don't want to articulate what to many people in our country. There's a causal factor here, the easy accessibility of guns. And I want to ask that question because I think it's important that the American people understand that we are a nation that is awash in guns, and we have more mass shootings than any other country, and yet we have been unable to pass the kind of laws that prevent these kinds of firearms to be easily available, that we have not done enough to promote gun safety in our country. And Mr. Chairman, I wanted to articulate that as the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address, including apparently our law enforcement officers. I am disappointed in that, but obviously we have work to do to create a much safer environment and to prevent.
So Hirono goes on to talk about how there needs to be the talk of gun control around all of this. I guess that's a conversation for another day. I want to end with this clip of more conversation about the timing and when the word gun was on the radio and when the first shots were fired. Here is Senator Lankford with the deputy director of the FBI talking about radio communications.
Got one officer being boosted up by another officer to look up on the roof because people on the ground had said there's someone up there and they have a gun that's crawling on that roof. And so they climbed up to be able to see it. He turned around with a rifle. He came down. And then at that point, he gets on the local radio that he has and says there's someone on the roof with a gun. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator, I believe that that's accurate.
So what's the rest of the radio communication? We've heard that first call in. We know it's about 30 seconds from the time he called in till the actual first shot rang out. What else was discussed on the radio during that 30-second time period?
Senator, we have the radio communications. The local radio communications were recorded and captured, and we do have that as part of the investigation. The key points to me, that local officer communicating that he sees the individuals, he's armed, that's at about 6:11 in some seconds, I think it's 3 seconds, and then he identifies it as a long gun at about 6:11 and 11 seconds. And the shots, which all happen quickly together, I believe happen within probably 30 seconds.
So we're talking about over the radio because there's a command center there.
Yes.
Where all radios, including the local, as they're all being listened to try to be able to review. There's a statement that has the word gun in it that's coming out across the radio. We only know that first communication. We don't know what came back and forth on that. We'd like to get transcripts of that conversation that was done in local law enforcement. But coming into that command center, there's also the word gun coming through one of the radio frequencies. I would think that would be communicated pretty quickly to everybody across the spectrum. 30 seconds is not long, but that's an NFL play plus a huddle plus the next play. I mean, that's quite a bit of time still to be able to respond. When Secret Service moved to be able to protect the president once the first shots were fired, within 2 seconds, they're gathered around him. So trying to be able to figure out where the word gun got lost in radio communication here and what else was said.
Again, pretty incredible line of questioning yesterday, 4-hour-plus hearing, a lot to be said and a lot more to be revealed, including conversations about the shooter's suspected social media seeming to be on both sides of the political spectrum, at least early media usage that federal authorities believe belonged to the shooter. They said was anti-migrant, but much later communications on a social media platform, Gab, seeming to be much more leftist. So a lot more to be said about all of that. All of this important because, of course, not just the DNC next month in Chicago, but you've got former President Trump in Chicago today. I believe midday. Trump's going to be speaking with a panel of black journalists. So former President Donald Trump set to talk to the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Chicago. And you've got Republicans saying this is going to give Republicans a bit of a boost in Chicago. We'll see what happens. But you've also got Mayor Brandon Johnson posting this on X. My administration's values and practice are in complete opposition to former President Trump's agenda, but I want the people of Chicago to know that the city's departments and agencies are fully prepared to uphold safety during his scheduled visit on Wednesday. So that's Mayor Brandon Johnson discussing that situation on X. We'll have you updated and give you some highlights on Trump's speech in Chicago if we can get those. So, of course, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Join us each and every weekday morning. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Long segment, but we got one more for you here. Again, follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop, Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network.